Time now for another Boca Behind the Scenes. I'm Dean Muccio, and this is where we talk with employees with the City of Boca Raton, find out a little bit about them, the job they do, and some of the things that they bring to the citizens of Boca. I want to welcome Keith Carney, who's the Floodplain Manager for the City of Boca. Keith, welcome.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate being here.
Great to have you here. And Zachary Bihr, for the Assistant City Engineer. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Dean. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So we're talking about knowing your flood hazard, protecting and insuring your property. That's the topic of our Boca Behind the Scenes. But I want to find out a little bit about you, Keith. Give us a little background on yourself, how long you've been with the city.
I've been with the city for 16 years. I've been the city's zoning officer for pretty much most of that time. And I am also the city's floodplain manager. I've had that role since 2004. So I've been managing the floodplain and being the CRS coordinator, the Community Rating System coordinator, which is a FEMA activity system that we implement as part of the floodplain management for the city.
Well, it's great to have you here. I've said this many times, but I love the longevity of the employees with the city. You've been here several years. Zachary, the Assistant City Engineer, tell us about yourself.
So originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and went to college there and met my wife. She grew up in Boca Raton. So we moved back, and I spent a lot of time doing engineering in the private sector. And then about a year and a half ago, right before Hurricane Irma, I got hired with the city and jumped right into it, as it were. So working through municipal services, and they have a wide range of functions, but the capital improvements projects, and then also the streets department, which takes care of the roads, sidewalks, and specifically related to flood, the drainage program. So stormwater guys.
Well, great to have you.
Thank
Welcome. Tell us a little bit about what a floodplain manager does in your department.
Generally, the day-to-day operation of a floodplain manager is primarily reviewing permits that come into the city for construction. Their city has regulations, and also the state of Florida has regulations regarding how high you have to build your structure to be compliant with the floodplain regulations that FEMA has set forth. So my day pretty much is mostly reviewing permits and making sure that the plans that are designed by the design professional are meeting the codes.
A lot of very busy, important work that you do, certainly.
Yes, and I'd also like to add that we also field many inquiries on from the residents and citizens of where they are located in the flood zones throughout the city, based on they're looking to get maybe flood insurance, or they want to purchase a property. They need that information to make their personal decisions.
That's great to know. Zachary, as the Assistant City Engineer in the Municipal Service Department, you're involved in stormwater management. What does that mean, and how does it relate to floodplain management?
Yes, so the city is part of a federal program, which is the National Pollution NPDES, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. I can never get unless I say the acronym. But that's a federal permitted program, so the city maintains compliance with that. And with that program, we're doing active inspections on the city's stormwater infrastructure. So it may surprise some people, but the city has over 3 miles of exfiltration trenches. Some people know that as French drains, but that's the backbone of the drainage system. It's an underwater, think of it like an underground gravel basin, where once the water flows in, it percolates through that. So you put rocks underground and you put a filter fabric around it, and it allows for a large amount of water to be dispersed back into the underground system. So, and if anybody's ever dug a backyard behind their house and keep digging and digging, it's all sand.
Yeah.
So when the water flows into the ground, it actually percolates back into the aquifer system. So we really encourage residents to take care of their swales. We're always promoting swales. It's the unsung hero of the city's drainage system. It allows water to percolate back down and recharge the aquifer where the city gets its drinking water. So it's a really nice natural process that also benefits the city.
Why are we talking about floods and flood insurance this month, statistically, and about floods?
This month we are going to be audited by FEMA. The Insurance Services Office comes to the city every 5 years. We call it a cycle visit. So they come in to review our floodplain management plan, all the aspects of what the city is doing to protect life and property due to flooding or flood events.
Right.
So basically, I mean, we'd like to raise the awareness all year long.
Sure.
It's not just October. It's basically we want to raise the awareness of the dangers of a flood event throughout the whole year. Flooding are basically it's the most common natural disaster in the whole country, and they've become way more prevalent now that we've had some 1,000-year storm events. Just recently, Hurricane Florence in the Carolinas, last year in Texas and Houston. So these events are becoming very prominent and extremely dangerous. So we're looking to just raise the awareness to the public.
How do people know if they're in the flood zone?
They could go to the city's website. We have our flood page to access their property information.
Okay.
They can input their address, and that will result in basically a map that will show their pinpointed location and where they're located. And the map is color. It's an aerial map. It'll show the flood lines. It'll show the required elevation that's required. So
everything they need is there.
It's a fairly interactive map. They could also go to the FEMA Gov website for flood information as well. It's virtually the same type of interactive system.
Do you have to be in a flood zone to get insurance?
No, you can still get insurance outside of a flood zone.
On the chance that things may change or elevations, could that change over time? I mean, could someone over a period of time end up in a flood zone?
Yes.
So that is possible.
Most certainly. This last October was basically our remapping that we got from FEMA. So we have all brand new flood maps. We used to have maps from 1984. So
Right.
it was a really long time since we've had an updated flood mapping analysis of the city. So the current maps are way more accurate. They were done by a LiDAR plane that flew over the city and shot topographical laser pinpointed elevations to determine what is going to be most susceptible to a flood event.
Right. Wow.
Right.
I bet things have changed since 1984. When you saw that map, you're like, well, this looks logical for this day and age. Go ahead, Zachary.
Definitely. Oh, really quick. So with the 100-year flood, you hear that a lot with Harvey and Florence. And for people listening to that, that doesn't guarantee a flood in 100 years or vice versa. That's an uncertainty. So you're looking at probabilities. That just means there's a 1% chance per year that you could get flooded. So if you're looking at that probability-wise, that's basically if you have a 30-year mortgage, a 26% chance while you have that mortgage of a flood event occurring. So it could happen in your area even if you're outside of a flood zone.
How can people, other than calling you going, am I in the flood zone, how can people protect their property from flood damage? Is there steps that they should take to protect their property if they're in a flood zone?
They could analyze their property by simply getting a land survey that provides the surveyor could give some elevations of what their floor is of their building, what the floor is of their garage. You could get the survey. You can get a FEMA flood elevation certificate, which is a way more definitive analysis specifically for
their property,
to analyze their property flood potential.
You touched on this, the swells and drainage, but discuss storm drains and swells and the importance of each of those. If you could go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to talk about that. So the city has a lot of different stormwater infrastructure. And so just to give it the path of a raindrop, when it falls on the street, it's going to flow from the street out over into either a swale. So those are the grassed areas next to the street, which is, most people don't pay attention to, but that is part of the stormwater system, especially in South Florida. And then it could also flow down into a stormwater grate. And I get a lot of questions when people say sewer. There's a difference between a sanitary sewer and a stormwater sewer. So if it's covered, it's likely that it's sanitary. That's where your wastewater goes from the shower and everything else.
Right.
But the stormwater grates, that's rainwater flowing directly into that. It flows in pipes. And then if you look out and see canals around the city and in areas, we actually have the C-15 to the north border of the city and the Hillsborough Canal to the south, and then the Intercoastal Waterway to the east border. And all of that rainwater flows down, kind of the Finding Nemo movie. All drains lead to the ocean. So when the raindrop gets into that system, it eventually makes its way out into the canals and out to the ocean. So, talking about illicit discharges, dumping, it's a moment to plug. Please don't dump anything down your storm drain. It doesn't just disappear.
Right.
That's going into the aquatic system with the fish and the wildlife that we love.
Yeah.
So, and the importance of that is keeping it clean. So, putting your vegetation on storm drains and other things that could potentially block the drainage system. When a major event occurs, that's when you're going to have your issues. Because if anything blocks that system, it's not going to function at its maximum potential.
Great information. Talk about who should have flood insurance. Obviously, somebody who's in the flood zone probably, should have flood insurance, but what the city's doing to reduce rates.
Well, I'd like to emphasize that everywhere is a flood zone. It's based on the level of risk in a specific land area that is more vulnerable to accumulation of water or tidal flooding. So basically, everybody is considered in a flood zone.
Okay.
So I think what people should remember is that the required elevations that FEMA sets out on their map, and they're delineated by lines on a map. If you're one street next to the line on the map, that is not going to
Yes.
the water is not going to stop at lines on the map.
Right.
So we would like to emphasize that to the public, is that you could be 3 streets over from someone that's in the special flood hazard area determined by FEMA. You're not going to be safe, possibly.
Right.
Okay. So that's why we encourage everybody to analyze their own individual property situation, consult with an insurance agent, and that way they can assess their potential for a flood.
How does our rating affect insurance rates?
Currently our CRS rating is a rated 8, and the scale goes from 1 to 10. Okay. 1 being the best rating. And basically there's only one jurisdiction in the United States that's rated a 1. So we're an 8. So what that relates to is that everybody that has a flood insurance policy gets a 10% discount on their premiums. And that is all based on the different activities that the city is involved with in managing the floodplain, providing public outreach, stormwater management, as Zach has alluded to, maintaining the elevation requirements in the code, and there's many other activities that we're involved with the CRS. So they basically score the city and rate us based on all these different things that we're involved with. So we're currently, our cycle visit is going to be coming up at the end of this month, and we've implemented a lot more activities. So we're thinking our score is going to improve. That's basically our goal right now, is to increase that score to get us to possibly a 7 or a 6 or maybe a 5, and the increments go by 5%. So if we get to a 7, we'll get the residents or property owners a 15% discount on their premiums.
Oh, okay.
And if we get to a 6, it'll be 20%, which is a substantial amount of savings for property owners.
How can property owners find out more about flood risk zones, insurance, safety? Go to the website?
Go to the city's website. We have created some brochures that are going to be sent out with their utility bills in the next couple weeks. They can go to the library. They can come to the city's building department. We have literature there. The building department address is not at City Hall. It's at 200 Northwest 2nd Avenue in the old library building. And they can call our office at the Development Services office, call the zoning office at 561-393-7792.
Or go to myboca.us/flood and
Yes.
get that information.
Correct.
So much information, good information. I mean, these are things that you think about flooding and flood, but to get the detail that you guys talked about is really great. It's a pleasure meeting you, Keith Carney, Floodplain Manager, and Zachary Bihr, Assistant City Engineer. Great meeting both of you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us, Dean.
Likewise.
Thanks for being a part of Boca Behind the Scenes.